The Unimaginable World, on Radical Inexistence and the Collapse of All Categories, by Mulat Tazabu, 2025. Overview. This book explores the concept of radical inexistence, the idea that all categories, including existence itself, are illusions born from language. It dismantles the scaffolding of thought, symbols, consciousness, reality, and transcendence, revealing that the world we perceive is not merely misunderstood, it never existed. Book structure. Prologue. The unimaginable begins, a poetic meditation on the impossibility of beginning. The failure of origin stories, the silence before thought. Part 1. The machinery of illusion. Chapter 1. Before the world. Time is a linguistic hallucination. The myth of before and after. The illusion of sequence. Chapter 2. Symbols and patterns. Mathematics as mythology. Geometry as sacred fiction. Pattern recognition as cognitive bias. Chapter 3. Language and thought. Wittgenstein's cage. Derrida's infinite deferral. Thought as a recursive illusion. Chapter 4. Naming as violence. Definition as metaphysical aggression. The tyranny of categories. The ethics of silence. Part 2. The collapse of consciousness. Part 3. The death of transcendence. Part 4. The observer and the end. Epilogue. The book that cannot be written. A reflection on the impossibility of the project. This work did not begin as a book. It began as a disturbance. A fracture in the scaffolding of thought, a rupture in the grammar of reality. It emerged not from a desire to explain, but from the impossibility of explanation. It was not conceived in clarity, but in collapse. What follows is not a system, a doctrine, or a theory. It is a dismantling. For years I've lived between two worlds, one of strategic precision, where I appears living, and another of radical metaphysical inquiry, where I confront the limits of language, the illusion of thought, and the architecture of existence itself. This book is born from the tension between those worlds, and from the recognition that both are performances within a deeper illusion. The unimaginable world is not a philosophical argument. It is a philosophical refusal. It does not seek to clarify, it seeks to collapse. It does not offer insight, it offers disappearance. It is not a critique of categories. It is the unraveling of the machinery that produces categories. It is not a meditation on being. It is the recognition that being is a grammatical echo. I did not write this book to be understood. I wrote it to enact the impossibility of understanding. I did not write it to be read. I wrote it to vanish in the act of reading. I did not write it to be remembered. I wrote it to dissolve the machinery of memory. If you find yourself disoriented, unsettled, or suspended in paradox, then the book has done its work. If you find yourself reaching for meaning and finding only collapse, then you have entered the unimaginable world. And if you find yourself asking whether this world is real, then you are still within the illusion. This is not a beginning. It is a gesture before disappearance. Mulat Tazabu, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, September 2025. The notion of before the world is among the most persistent and seductive illusions in the history of human thought. It appears in mythologies, cosmologies, scientific theories, and philosophical inquiries alike. Whether framed as the primordial void, the divine act of creation, the quantum singularity preceding the Big Bang, or the metaphysical ground of being, the idea of a before presupposes a temporal framework, a linear unfolding of events that can be traced, narrated, and understood. Yet this framework is not a neutral container of reality. It is a linguistic and cognitive construct, born from the architecture of thought itself. Time, as commonly conceived, is not an objective dimension awaiting discovery. It is not a river flowing independently of perception, nor a cosmic clock ticking in the background of existence. Rather, time is a conceptual artifact, a pattern imposed by consciousness upon the flux of experience. It is a grammar of change, a syntax of succession, a narrative device that allows the mind to organize phenomena into sequences of cause and effect. But this organization is not inherent in reality. It is a projection, a fiction, a definitional illusion. To speak of before the world is already to speak from within the world. The phrase assumes a vantage point, a reference frame, a contrast between what is and what was. It implies the existence of a subject capable of observing, remembering, or imagining a state prior to the emergence of the world. But such a subject is itself a product of the world, a construct of language, thought, and identity. There is no outside to the world from which one might observe its beginning. The very act of positing a before collapses under the weight of its own assumptions. Origin stories, whether theological, scientific, or philosophical, are not descriptions of reality but performances of meaning. They do not reveal what happened. They enact a framework within which happening becomes intelligible. The Genesis account, the Big Bang theory, the Upanishadic hymns, and the metaphysical speculations of Parmenides or Kant all share a common structure. They begin with a gesture of definition. In the beginning is not a neutral statement. It is a command to imagine, to conceptualize, to enter into the machinery of thought. And once that machinery is engaged, the illusion of sequence is born. Human beings have long believed that the universe is structured, ordered, and intelligible. From the earliest cave markings to the most advanced mathematical equations, we have sought to encode reality in symbols and patterns. These symbols are not merely tools of communication. They are treated as windows into truth, as representations of something deeper, more fundamental, more real. A circle is not just a shape. It becomes a symbol of eternity, perfection, or unity. A number is not just a quantity. It becomes a principle, a law, a universal constant. A sacred emblem is not just an image. It becomes a portal to the divine. Yet all of these meanings are illusions. Symbols and patterns do not reveal reality. They construct it. They are not reflections of truth, but projections of thought. Mathematics is often held up as the ultimate language of truth. It is precise, abstract, universal. It seems to transcend culture, history, and subjectivity. Yet mathematics is not discovered. It is invented. Its axioms are chosen, its systems constructed, its symbols defined. The number pi, the concept of infinity, the structure of Euclidean space, none of these exist outside the mind. They are not properties of the universe, but products of cognition. The universality of mathematics is not proof of its truth, but proof of the consistency of human thought. And consistency is not reality. Language is often celebrated as the crowning achievement of human civilization. It is the medium through which we communicate, reason, imagine, remember, and construct meaning. It is the foundation of culture, the vehicle of knowledge, the architecture of identity. Thought, in turn, is regarded as the inner dimension of language, the silent discourse of the mind, the invisible engine of understanding. Together, language and thought form the scaffolding of human experience. They are treated as the instruments by which we grasp reality, interpret the world, and define ourselves. Yet this scaffolding is not a bridge to truth. It is a cage of illusion. To speak is to define. Every word is a boundary, a distinction, a separation. It carves the flux of experience into discrete units, assigns names to phenomena, and imposes structure upon chaos. But this carving is not neutral. It is an act of metaphysical violence, a rupture in the fluidity of being. The moment something is named, it is no longer what it was. It becomes a concept, a category, a symbol. And that symbol is not the thing itself. It is a representation, a surrogate, a fiction. Thought operates in the same way. To think is to manipulate symbols, to arrange concepts, to navigate definitions. Thought is not a direct apprehension of reality. It is a linguistic performance. Even the most abstract ideas, the most subtle intuitions, the most profound insights are shaped by the grammar of language. There is no thought without language, and no language without thought. They are not separate faculties. They are two sides of the same illusion. This entanglement has profound implications. It means that the mind is not a window to the world, but a mirror of its own constructions. It means that understanding is not a revelation, but a repetition. It means that meaning is not discovered, but manufactured. The mind does not uncover truth. It invents coherence, and coherence is not reality. To name is to violate. This statement may seem extreme, even paradoxical, given that naming is typically regarded as a foundational act of understanding, communication, and civilization. From the earliest myths to the most advanced scientific theories, Naming has been treated as a sacred power, the ability to bring order to chaos, to distinguish one thing from another, to make the invisible visible. In religious traditions, naming is divine. In philosophy, it is epistemological. In law, it is authoritative. Yet beneath this reverence lies a deeper truth. Naming is not a revelation of reality but a rupture within it. It is not a gesture of clarity, but an act of metaphysical aggression. To name something is to isolate it from the undivided whole. It is to draw a boundary, to impose a limit, to declare that this is not that. But the world, prior to naming, is not composed of discrete entities. It is not a collection of things waiting to be labeled. It is a fluid continuum, a seamless unfolding, a field without edges. The moment a name is assigned, this fluidity is fractured. The named object becomes a concept, a category, a symbol. And the symbol is not the thing itself, it is a representation, a reduction, a fiction. Among all human illusions, none is more persistent, more intimate, or more fiercely defended than the illusion of the self. It is the locus of experience, the center of thought, the presumed origin of action. It is the I that speaks, remembers, desires, suffers, and hopes. It is the entity that claims ownership of the body, the mind, the past, and the future. It is the subject of autobiography, the protagonist of narrative, the bearer of identity. Yet despite its apparent immediacy, the self is not a given. It is not a substance, a soul, or a stable core. It is a construct, a performance sustained by language, memory, and repetition. To say I am is to invoke a grammatical structure, not a metaphysical truth. The pronoun I does not refer to a fixed entity. It is a placeholder, a linguistic function, a syntactic convenience. It arises from the architecture of language, not from the essence of being. The self is not discovered, it is narrated. And the narration is not a reflection, it is a fabrication. The mind believes in its own story because it is written in the language it cannot escape. This story is recursive. It loops back upon itself, reinforcing its own premises, confirming its own existence. The self remembers its past, anticipates its future, and interprets its present, all within the framework of its own narrative. But this framework is not neutral. It is shaped by culture, conditioned by history, and constrained by grammar. The self is not free. It is scripted. Even consciousness, often regarded as the foundation of selfhood, is not immune to this critique. Consciousness is not a pure awareness, a transparent witness, or an inner light. It is a definitional construct, a category invented to explain experience. The idea that there is a subject who observes, feels, and knows is not a discovery. It is a presupposition. It arises from the need to organize experience, to assign agency, to stabilize perception. But this organization is not inherent in reality. It is imposed by thought, and thought, as shown earlier, is inseparable from language. Therefore, consciousness is not a window to the self. It is a mirror of its own illusions. The unimaginable world lies beyond the self, not as a realm to be reached, but as the absence of reaching. It is not a state of pure awareness, for awareness is a concept. It is not a condition of being, for being is a category. It is not the truth behind illusion, for truth is a definition. It is what remains when the machinery of language and thought collapses. And what remains is not silence, not emptiness, not peace. What remains is the recognition that there is no recognition. To approach the unimaginable world is not to think differently. It is to cease thinking. It is not to speak more clearly. It is to stop speaking. It is not to find new meanings. It is to abandon meaning. It is not a journey of the mind. It is the dissolution of the mind. And in that dissolution, the world disappears, not because it ends, but because it was never there. This is the collapse of language and thought. This is the end of definition. This is the unimaginable world.